Welcome to Mysterious Japan, created by Heath Havey and dedicated to Japan's dark histories, ghost stories, and frightful folklore. This is the dark side of Japan. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to episode 35 of Mysterious Japan. This week we begin a retelling of perhaps the most famous of the Yotsuya Kaidan, Japan's three great ghost stories. This is the tale called the Yotsuya Kaidan, or sometimes just Oiwa. The true events inspiring this story occurred between 1683 and approximately 1711. The core of this story is based on true happenings, which are then mixed with folklore and superstition to create arguably the best-known ghost story in Japan. The fear of Oiwa's ghostly vengeance was quite real, and it resulted in the erection of a shrine in 1717 to pacify her vengeful spirit. That shrine still exists to this day in Yotsuya, which has since become part of northwestern Tokyo. Whether the shrine propitiates the wrath of this grudge spirit perhaps is yet to be decided, as her vengeful spirit is believed to be one of the meanest and most relentless. Due to the story's popularity, many Japanese have researched its origins, finding that the border between actual events and supernatural fallout are hazy and hard to pin down. But whatever level of truth remains in this tale, it has influenced the entire genre of ghost stories in Japan, continuing to this day. Her story was the basis of a popular kabuki play in the 19th century. She can be found in rakugo storytelling tradition and in woodblock prints. And even today she endures in Japanese and Hollywood movies, inspiring characters in movies from The Ring and The Grudge to manga and anime. The long black hair covering the face, the white dress, and the offset eye mark her influence, and her quest for vengeance beyond the grave is an ever-ongoing motivation in Japanese ghost stories. Indeed, the Oiwa syndrome, as it is called, is a term reflecting the human capacity to empathize with her tragic fate and desire for revenge. The real Oiwa committed suicide after being the victim of a cruel plot between her husband and others, and she vowed to visit her rage upon all involved in the conspiracy. The story of Oiwa has a somewhat unique place in the ghost story traditions of Japan. Those involved believed that if Oiwa's story was not respected and told truthfully, any involved in the inaccurate retelling would suffer her divine wrath. To this end, printing and disseminating the legend of Oiwa resulted in written accounts more than the oral tradition, which is quite the opposite of many similar tales that have many different versions in the retelling and are much shorter due to the oral tradition. The original tale of Oiwa is told in collected parts, totaling about 300 pages in length. Sadly, searching her story on the internet reveals only small snippets and summaries of the main ghost story that completely fail to pull the audience in to experience the Oiwa syndrome. In these next two episodes, we aim to correct that disservice and tell Oiwa's story completely, although in condensed form. Part 1. The Tragedy and Treachery of Omno, Oiwa's mother. It is 1683. Tamiya is a high-ranking government official. As Doshin, he holds the highest rank of the permanent staff of the Tokugawa shogunate. He rules over the Yotsuya district just northwest of the capital. At the time, Yotsuya district was an important entrance point into the capital city. Tamiya is the perfect bureaucrat, all business, harsh to his inferiors and acting with abject deference to his superiors. The shogunate values him so highly that he receives double salary, a fine mansion to live in, and a grove of precious fruit trees. He is wealthy with lands and income from tenants. His home is large, even pretentious, a situation aided by Tamiya's miserly ways. Some might call him the Ebenezer Scrooge of Japanese history. But the people in his district despise him for his penny-pinching ways. They do not benefit them at all. The district mayor, named Ito Kwaiba, is frequently at odds with him, a feud that will continue their entire lives. But Kwaiba cannot do anything with Tamiya in the good graces of the shogun. Tamiya lives with his wife Onaka and his daughter Omino. As he starts to age, Tamiya employs a 19-year-old man named Densuke to do manual labor. Densuke will be the samurai attendant. Many consider Densuke to be one of the most handsome men in the district, especially when he serves the shogun in full uniform with pike in hand. Tamiya's daughter Omino especially takes great care in looking her best to impress Densuke. Her crush is obvious as she covers her face in makeup and does her best to impress him. But Omino suffers from a disfigurement. Her face is broad and flat, and her back has a slight hunch to it. Her arms and legs are disproportionately long, and her non-existent breasts are described as forming a concavity corresponding to the convexity of her hunched back. During puberty, an attack of smallpox left her face pockmarked, and she scratched at the itchy sores until they left scars. The disease also cost her an eye, which had to be removed. This has left her with a cavity where her eye should be. Throughout childhood, she was relentlessly teased and called Nin-san Bake Shichi, which means 30% human and 70% monster. Children often pointed at her and called her Oni, meaning demon, or Bakech, meaning monster. She grew up without friends. None of the girls would associate themselves with her, and now that she is an adult, nothing has changed. But Omino did not take the relentless cruelty laying down. She fought back and retaliated against them, often leading to yelling and even fights. Eventually, she discovered that her father's orchard was her safest place of peace. Her obsession with Densuke leads her to give the samurai attendant small jobs to do, for which she rewards him with great pay, and she secretly repairs his clothes and finds any small task to help him with. But her miserly father does not like Densuke's excesses, and he orders Densuke to save oil and turn off the lamps at night. This gives Omino an opening. In the safety of the dark night, she approaches Densuke and suddenly embraces him in a passionate hold. The young attendant is frightened and confused by her attention, but he also knows she is the daughter of his lord, so he does not resist her advances, and the darkness of night covers her hideous form. After their night together, Omino lavishes Densuke with gifts and visits him every night. In a panic should they be found out. But unable to resist, he thinks perhaps he should flee to his home village, but then Omino then gives him tasks to do, which force him to remain. And there is always the threat that she will tell her father, which would surely lead to Densuke's execution by hanging or beheading. But Tamiya does catch on to the change in demeanor. He tells his wife Onaka that something has changed and that he hears rumors that Omino is pregnant with a child of Densuke. If the rumor is true, then he will be forced to execute them both for this dishonor. Alarmed, Omika warns Omino. Though disfigured, Omino is clever. She tells her mother that such thoughts are ridiculous because she is 23 and he just 19, and she surely deserves a better husband than an attendant. But that night, Omino tells Densuke that her father plans to kill them both for their indiscretion when he returns to the mansion. She says they must accept execution as their fate, or they can run away together. Terror overcomes Densuke. He prostrates himself, bowing low to the ground, and tells Omino he will abandon the house and go back to his home village. As fiery as ever, Omino yells at Densuke that he is a fool to abandon her, but she says she will never allow herself to die by her father's sword. She will drown herself in the well and then reappear and hunt Densuke down in 3 days for abandoning her. She will tear his body to pieces and he will die a miserable death. It would be better for him to stay with her and face their fate together. She then moves her face close to his lowered head and bites off a piece of his ear with one violent jerk, before jumping back to the veranda. Densuke jumps to his feet, clutching his bleeding earlobe. He finds himself facing the demented girl, whose mouth hangs half open and dripping with blood, with teeth displayed in an insane smile. Her single eye pierces him with malignant gleams, and the fold of skin over her empty eye socket quivers. He has never seen anything so frightful in all his life. Rather than turn to her with anger, Densuke apologizes, begging her to forgive him, and says she is right, they should run away together. In fact, they can stay with Kyubei, his uncle in a nearby town. Omino gathers presents and silver to take with them and offer the uncle for their keep. She tells him they will marry secretly and go as newlyweds. Part 2. The Birth of Oiwa. At his uncle's manor, after he admits that he has gotten married, Densuke begins unloading the horse-drawn cart with his uncle Kyubei helping. Kyubei, who does not see that Omino is hiding around the corner, laughs and says,
As long as it is not with the bald one-eyed Oni, with a face like a dish. But how is the demon girl? At least she is rich. Perhaps they can find a match for her someday.
Densuke was unable to interrupt or get a word in, but it was too late now, and his uncle saw the expression on his nephew's face. The uncle responds to that expression.
Oh dear. Well, you must have committed a carnal sin with the demon. A child must be on the way. No wonder she sends you with so many presents.
Densuke leans in close and whispers to his uncle that she threatened to kill herself and haunt him if he refused her. And neither realize that Omino eavesdrops just around the corner of the house. She steps forward, head held high, and says that Densuke is right. They come as husband and wife. Surprising both men, she bows low to the ground and asks politely for the uncle to give them shelter and act as intercessor with her father. The uncle, feeling abashed when he realizes she overheard him talking ill of her, stands silent and unresponsive. But his wife has heard everything and steps forward, telling Omino she can make this dwelling her home for as long as she wants, and she apologizes for her husband being such an ass. Kyubei does not respond, but he is not as open to the situation as his wife. In fact, he feels a duty to report this. Arranging a meeting with Tamiya, he tells the rich bureaucrat that his nephew has wickedly seduced Tamiya's daughter, Omino. Yet he asks that Tamiya treat them with mercy, especially because Omino is pregnant, and Confucius would call for benevolence. Always the strict civil servant, Tamiya responds that the penalty under the law is death, but he will give some mercy. Omino will be disowned for 7 lifetimes. Neither she nor Densuke may ever show their faces to him again, and Densuke should feel lucky to have secured such a beautiful bride. As he dismisses Kyubei, Tamiya says they will be seeing less of Kyubei in the future. A shaken Kyubei thinks Tamiya is threatening his execution for harboring the fugitive newlyweds, but Tamiya's wife Onaka tells him not to worry. She gives him gifts for the couple and asks to see the child when it is born, because a baby may just soften a father's heart. Meanwhile, Densuke finds work as a cook for a severe and violent chef named Takahashi. One day while looking for ingredients, Densuke opens a basket and sees the severed head of a man inside. Takahashi catches him in the act. He threatens to kill Densuke for discovering the murder, but then explains that the man was a moneylender who deserved his fate after threatening Takahashi when he could not pay back the loan. With one deeply scarred hand from years of fighting and a hard life, Takahashi lifts the decapitated head out of the basket by the hair. He says, "Today, you will do me a favor so that we do not find 2 heads in that basket. Having this corpse puts me in an awkward predicament that you will solve." Providing Densuke some money, he tasked Densuke with disposing of the body. Of course, this money had been robbed from the corpse of the moneylender. Densuke must take the body out of town and dispose of it the following day in a certain area of the moat by the castle. And if he fails, Takahashi will tell them that Densuke killed the moneylender. Left without choice, Densuke dismembers the body and puts all the parts in a mat that he wraps up with the head on the belly of the corpse. Then he ties the bundle in red raincoats to disguise any blood stains. Finally, he ties the complete package in ropes and throws it over his back. Leaving the center of town, he tells the gate sentries that he was taking out laundry to be washed. They let him pass, and he makes it all the way to the castle and the moat. But as he is about to throw the bundled body over the wall, a samurai standing guard at the gate tells him to halt. Terror overcomes Densuke, and he flees into a crowd of people nearby, gathered for June celebrations. Trying to stay hidden until he can return, he still carries the body over his back, and it is about 9 p.m. when a man yells out his name. He freezes. At last, he is discovered. His crime will bring him death. but the man says he has been looking for Densuke because his wife is in labor. Densuke wonders if the man might guess what is bundled and thrown over his shoulder. Does it stink? Does blood drip from the folded and tied mats to the ground? But apparently without suspicion, this neighbor of his uncle leads him through the crowd to his wife. The whole time, the dismembered body of the moneylender is tied and bound in the mat over Densuke's shoulder. So spooked by this is Densuke that he thinks he can feel the teeth of the severed head biting into his spine as he walks with the bundle bouncing against his back. He is still holding the bundle over his shoulders when he walks in the front door. He lights the lamps on the Buddhist altar, and Ominyo asks him what is in the bundle. Again, he claims it is just laundry for the chef. In the pains of labor, Omino barks at Densuke to fetch the midwife. While her husband is gone, Omino lets curiosity get the better of her between contractions. The bundle does not smell like washing, and why were the raincoats wrapped around it? Why is tied with rope? And Densuke had the money in hand to pay the midwife. Where did he receive that money? He told her it was for special services rendered to the chef Takahashi. But could he be a thief? Just making up a story about his boss? Could those be stolen items in that bundle? Looking through the raincoat, she sees cloth matting within. With a kitchen knife, she slashes open the ropes. The package unfurls before her, and a head rolls out and onto the floor. Upon seeing the dismembered body and the lifeless head, she begins screaming. So loud are her screams that the entire neighborhood runs over to see what is wrong. They find blood and body parts, and soon they are saying that she has given birth to both a baby and a head. And in this confusion and chaos is born an infant girl named Oiwa. Densuke flees, knowing he is now doomed to be executed for murder. An investigation begins, and Omino swears to them all that her husband could not have committed this crime. With her husband accused and her life in tatters, she realizes that Takahashi is behind this. Only he could be evil enough to commit such a murder and intimidate her husband into this deed. She curses Takahashi that she shall pursue him through 7 incarnations of life and chase him for revenge for 7 lifetimes. But she is bleeding heavily from the birth and her nerves cannot take this fright. She dies in the midst of cursing Takahashi. Though the neighbors agree that Densuke could not have committed this crime, he has disappeared. When he hears about the debacle with the body, Takahashi also flees. Part 3. The Fate of Takahashi. 12 years later, it is 1695, and 12-year-old Oiwa has been adopted and spoiled by her grandparents, whose hearts have softened toward the situation. Her appearance is not much better than her mother. She has the flat face with small eyes peering out behind swollen eyelids, and childhood disease resulted in black pockmarks on her face. The disease also caused patches of her hair to fall out. But unlike her mother, Oiwa has a kind and temperate disposition, not tending toward the fiery outbursts or rage of her mother. Her grandparents have her raised as a noblewoman and send her to be trained in the greatest house in the capital. While Oiwa is in training to be a lady, strange events are afoot in the streets. A group of bandits disguised as samurai rob a clerk in the dead of night. But the clerk draws his sword and fights back, wounding one in the face and nearly severing the hand of another. When approached for medical treatment, the suspicious doctors report the matter, and the investigation uncovers that one of the bandits is Takahashi. Caught and exposed by his 2 fellow bandits, Takahashi has no recourse but to confess everything to avoid torture and the public spectacle of a trial. And also confesses that he caught up to Densuke about a year after Oiwa's birth. Densuke was reduced to begging, and Takahashi killed him out of revenge for the fiasco with the moneylender's body. He disposed of Densuke's body at the castle moat. The 3 bandits are taken to the Shinagawa execution grounds and decapitated. Takahashi's wife fears that retribution will fall on her for her husband's evil deeds. She flees with their 8-year-old son and places him in the Buddhist temple as a disciple. He receives the name Myoshin. The young boy grows up to be a favorite of the priests, strict in following the ways of the Buddha. But when he is 18 years old, he learns that his mother fell into homelessness and poverty before dying a destitute and broken woman. Something snaps in Myoshin at that moment. He takes money from the temple strongbox, spends it on geisha, and disappears. The other priests are saddened by their misjudgment and rule that he is an unworthy proselyte who ended up as a blight on their temple due to the evil deeds of his father. His father's bad karma has fallen on his head. So they believe, but Myoshin is the master of his own evil destiny. Part 4. Marriage for Oiwa. Meanwhile, because Oiwa is plain and unattractive, the lord of the manor and his wife find Oiwa to be a great blessing to their household. She has many abilities in the arts, in managing staff, and in everything brought before her, and her lovely temperament wins the devotion of those around her without the issue of sexual attraction causing problems. But this also means that they are unable to secure a marriage for her. This saddens the lord and his wife, and they reluctantly let her return home at the end of her service. Tamiya is now 70 years old and suffering from the effects of age, and he wants to make sure Oiwa has a good marriage before he passes. He sees Oiwa as a recovered jewel, and she soon puts the house in order. The ever-miserly Tamiya is even more impressed when she releases many of the unnecessary servants his wife had, thus saving money and showing her practicality. It is now 1708, and Oiwa is 25 years old, almost past marrying age. Knowing the difficulty of marrying off Oya, Tamiya hires a go-between matchmaker named Kondo. But Kondo finds this job difficult for an ugly yet well-tempered girl. He hires a man named Chobei who will do anything for money. In fact, they call him Blind Chobei because he will do anything for money without even looking into it. But Chobei has connections far outside the capital and seems to be the best to use for this difficult assignment. When Chobei hears the task, he knows something must be wrong with this girl, but Konedo offers him a great sum. Chobei assures him that wealth compensates for her deficiencies in appearance. Tamiya's miserliness and quick temper, combined with Oiwa's deformed appearance, are facts spread far and wide. Rumors have spread all over about them, some true and some not. Many think her pockmarks and hair loss might be the sign of leprosy, and perhaps her late age of 25 means she has something else wrong with her. Or she might not be chaste. Even Chobei finds this task harder than anticipated. His own reputation does not help. All who know him believe he will put a spin on any task to try to make money, so they hardly trust him when he denies the rumors. Perhaps worst of all, he owns a brothel and is known to pimp out prostitution as one of his primary sources of income. Few believe or respect him. The year has now passed into 1709 with no success for Chobei or Kondo. But Chobei is thinking of a frequent customer of his brothel, a young man named Kazuma, who makes his living as a strolling fortune teller. Kazuma is a ronin, a masterless samurai. He tells fortunes, but business is slow, and he jokes with Chobei that people will not pay to know their futures when they can use that money to pay for present pleasures at Chobei's house of ill repute. Kazuma is 21, and Chobei says he has a girl who can become Kazuma's fortune. Kazuma retorts that he has already lost a fortune in Chobei's prostitution houses. But Chobei persists by telling Kazuma that Oiwa is wealthy and can help restore him to his samurai status in the house of her grandfather Tamiya. Now Kazuma is a handsome young man fond of women. Nevertheless, he suspects something is amiss. He inquires what is wrong with the woman. Is she a monster? Is she the long-necked, pop-eyed Rokubi yokai of legend? Chobei admits she is not attractive and has pockmarks, but she is a normal woman. Chobei says he has been watching Kazuma and notes that he drinks his tea in a manner reminiscent of a priest. Kazuma laughs and admits he used to be a priest. He hides the secret that he is the young priest Myoshin, the son of Takahashi, who stole money from the temple and spent it all at Chobei's brothel. Kazuma accepts the proposal. Chobei tells him there will be an additional commission to pay once he has access to the house funds. The engagement is secured, and they agree to meet the matchmaker, Kondo, to discuss details. Kondo has suspicions about this marriage prospect, but Chobei pushes back hard, stating that they had a deal. Kondo comments that a fox is stealing a jewel. But, though despite resisting, he agrees with Chobei that they should finalize the deal before Kazuma actually sees Oiwa. Visiting the manor in Yotsuya with Chobei and Kondo, Kazuma is entranced by Tamie's rich estate. The extensive property, the servants, and the wealth convince him to finalize the deal, even without seeing Oiwa. In his head, he counts all of the income that can be made from this wealth, and once Tamie dies, Kazuma will be master of the house. It will all be his. Illness accompanying age means that Tamie is too sick, being laid up in bed, and he cannot meet this suitor. But he meets Tamie's wife, Onaka, wearing the finest raiment Chobei could purchase for him. After a deep bow, she marvels at this handsome man in such fine clothes, and Kazuma uses the manners he learned as a priest to flatter and charm his future grandmother-in-law. Perhaps to ensure the Ronin does not back out, Onaka says that Oiwa has taken ill and cannot meet him, and even if she would meet him despite being ill, Oiwa would never disrespect him by meeting him without proper clothes, hair, and makeup. Chobei jumps up and agrees that this shows how much care Oiwa takes. This gracious conduct bodes well for their marriage, and her respect is to be commended. With agreement secured, they proceed quickly with the engagement parties. Again, Kazuma does not meet Oiwa at these parties because she has been called to help with the house of her former master, where they had loved her so much, and she will be gone for 3 days. Part 5. Oiwa's Vow of Vengeance. When Oiwa returns, the day of the wedding is here. Chobei presents her with a wataboshi, a type of hood and veil worn in Shinto weddings. This will cover her patches of missing hair and her uncomely face. And so it is that Kazuma does not even see the face of his bride at the wedding. And Kazuma does not protest because he has been drinking sake until he is drunk. Chobei counts 9 glasses of sake that day, and thus they sit kneeling before the priest and pledge themselves to each other. Gabi, following the vows, the priest reaches out and loosens the wataboshi strings. He removes the veil and hood from the head of the bride. Kazuma gasps and jumps to his feet, but then regains his composure and mumbles apologies as he sinks back down to his kneeling position. He has now seen the pearl-white face marred with black pockmarks. The hood has slightly disarrayed the hair underneath, making the expansive forehead and missing patches of hair all the more apparent. The puffy eyelids conspicuously stand out against the face like dimplings, and she stoops with a similar hunch that her mother had. After the ceremony, once he can do so without drawing attention, Kazuma grabs Chobei by the arm and says,
"What is that? Who is this creature I am now bound to?"
Chobei responds that it is his wife, and that he should not act the fool because even a buyer of a horse or cow knows little of the animal or its true qualities. And now he will be called Master Ieamon, a man with a splendid property married into a rich family. He has little to complain about, and any attempt to withdraw will result in scandal. Besides, both the grandfather and grandmother will die soon, leaving him master of all this wealth. And he tells the ex-Kazuma, now called Ieamon, that he can take concubines if he wants a pretty wife. Chobei even offers to give him one from the brothel. Per the custom, when marrying into a higher status family, Kazuma took on a new name. That is why he now calls himself Ieamoni. And this is now a man of many names. For Kazuma is the name taken by Moshin the thieving priest to evade justice from the temple priests. And before that he was Kichitaro, the son of Takahashi. And Oiwa has no way of knowing that the man she just married is the son of the villain who set into motion the death of her mother and father. The ex-Kazuma, now Ieamon, says to Chobei,
"This bride is a lopsided leper."
But Chobei says it is not leprosy, but instead the scars from smallpox. Besides, he says, Ieamon should rejoice that she cannot grow more ugly with age. Ieamon notices more flaws in his new wife when they meet for the celebration. She limps due to one leg shrinking in illness, causing a strange gait. But he will play his part, and he sits with her at dinner that night. Being a former priest, he takes the mortuary tablets from the house altar and comments that those inscribed on them all died in the same year. Was it an illness or a mutual suicide? Oiwa tells him the story of her mother and Densuke, and how Densuke was forced to dispose of the body of a man murdered by his wicked boss. And when Oiwa's mother saw the body parts bound in cloth, it sent her into convulsions, giving birth to Oiwa but causing her own death. She says,
I was brought into this world by the exposure of a crime of a very wicked man. My father fled, and in that same year they found his body floating in the castle moat. Many years later, the murderer of my father was found and put to death after confession. This removed all chance I have of avenging the deaths of my father and mother. But I know this evil man had a son named Kichitaro. My one vow is to avenge on him the wickedness of his father Takashi.
With this story, and with the name of his evil father, Iyomon gives a violent start. He had taken the false names of Myoshin, Kazuma, and now Yomon to cover up his real name, Kichitaro, and his relation to that murderer Takahashi. Holding in the swelling emotions, the groom says that her feelings are understandable, but why hold such hatred toward a young boy? How can she hold him responsible for his father's sins? She laughs and says,
You think like a man, trying to reason your way out of justice. But I am a woman with feelings to consult. I will clutch and chew and pursue this wicked son of a wicked father for 7 lifetimes. My vow is made against the son as well as the father.
As Iyamon watches her express these emotions of hate and vengeance, he is witnessing an ugly face transform into a demon's face. The black spots stand out, the eyes sink into evil points in her head, and the mouth spreads with large shining teeth. The gentle girl is a devil beneath, he thinks in fright.
I disturb you with my tale, but leave the affair and its vengeance to me. It is not to bother you. I am bound to you for 2 lifetimes as wife, and I beg you to look on me with affection.
Every day after that marriage night, Iyamon suffers nightmares. He feels the impressions of her teeth on his throat and wakes up gasping and grabbing at his neck. But he lulls her into believing he is devoted to her and vows silently that she must never know the truth, that his father killed her father and was responsible for all the tragedy in her life, for she has married the object of her vengeance. Part 6. The Plot Against Oiwa. Imon puts forth his best charm and manners for Tamiya, Onaka, Oiwa, and even the servants. But within a month, Tamiya passes away. It is as if he held on just long enough to see his granddaughter married. On his deathbed, Tamiya makes Iyamon promise to treat his granddaughter well, and to never to take a concubine. Doing so will kill her inside, for she already feels herself unworthy. Amiability is compensation for her lack of beauty, and such a disposition should not be strained or made unhappy. Iyamon must do nothing to injure her in any way, body or spirit. Holding the old man's hand, Iyamon swears to follow Tamiya's final request. His charm hides the dark heart beneath, and luckily for him, Oiwa's ugliness is surpassed by her good-natured disposition and belief in the good in all men. She never suspects a thing. Iyamon finds himself inheriting the great estates of Tamiya with the blessing of the old man. Not long after, Onaka follows Tamiya in death. Later, some will come to believe Iyamon poisoned the old woman to make his inheritance complete. Whatever the cause, now Iyamon can look to the future without impediment. Outwardly, he is the same kind man winning the praises of all, but internally he is plotting. Only Oiwa stands in his way. As head of the estate, Yaemon finds himself invited to dine with Lord Kwaiba, the head of Yotsuya district, who has been in a constant feud with Tamiya for decades. Yaemon charms Lord Kwaiba, who admits that he has been at odds with Tamiya for many years and was glad to see the old man die, but now is a time when the two houses may know peace. Yotsuya district can be made to benefit them both together. Lord Oiwa says that Ieamon is the spitting image of himself when he was young and handsome, and he was surprised to hear that Ieamon had married Oiwa. His pause in stating this name informs Ieamon that the man had almost said Obake, meaning monster, instead of Oiwa. Ieamon's pride is injured when he realizes all around him think of him as marrying an unattractive girl above his station. Lord Oiwa calls his concubine Ohana to serve drinks, and Ieamon is immediately caught by her beauty. She is barely 20 years old, yet Lord Oiwa purchased her like a slave or servant because of her beauty, although he considered that he rescued her from the geisha houses. And beyond her beauty, Ohana moves with the grace and delicacy of the finest trained geisha, but is treated as a servant, perhaps because she has been rescued from the life of a harlot. Ieamon then recognizes Ohana, and Lord Oiwa asks how he knows her. Ieamon cannot reveal the truth, for she is the harlot he spent all the temple's money on at Chobei's brothel. Back then she reciprocated his love, and they planned to get married. But Ieamon would have to purchase her, and Chobei wanted too much. When Ohana found out that the temple was looking for the former priest-turned-thief who stole the money, she warned him. Ieamon had no choice but to flee and leave her behind. That was 2 years ago, but just seeing her now rekindles his passion. He cannot say this to Lord Oiwa, so Ieamon makes up a story of helping her from a drunken samurai. But Lord Oiwa is no fool. He knows there is something more. Ieamon finds excuses to visit Lord Oiwa to play Go, but mostly to begin a renewed love affair with Ohana, who equally returns his passion. Rumors of the affair reach the matchmaker Kondo, and he meets Ieamon, warning him that Lord Oiwa is no man to trifle with, and the neighbors' tongues are wagging. While the men talk, Oiwa approaches, and Ieamon tells her to go home and go to bed, for he will be out late. She says the sounds of his footsteps will awake her when he returns. When he responds that his footsteps sound like any other man's, she says,
And the wife can no longer distinguish her husband's footsteps? Then her affection has departed. I will receive you in my bed no matter the hour.
Exasperated at her devotion and desiring to injure her heart, he says that the young men will all go to a geisha house and it will be late. She winces at this, but acknowledges his right to visit prostitutes, as was commonplace in their time, and says,
The master is always master. Within and without the house. He may do as he pleases, of course.
Konedo admires what a true and understanding wife she is, to not be angered by such an admission. But the next day, Lord Oiwa finds a note from Ohana to Ieamon that Ieamon recklessly dropped in his drunkenness. With Ohana, Ieamon, Kondo, and his adopted son Kibe present, he reads the note professing love. Ohana's note claims that Oiwa is the punishment on Ieamon for sins in a previous life, and someday Ohana and Ieamon will be together as husband and wife. The enraged Oiwa reaches for his sword to strike down and kill Ieamon and Ohana for their insolence, but his adopted son Kibe intervenes. He claims that Oiwa can pay for the many years their houses have been feuding, and to ensure his own inheritance, he asks Oiwa why he clings to the foolish harlot Ohana if she has been unable to give him an heir, and if Ieamon and Ohana assist him, then Oiwa can release her and they can join as husband and wife. Then Ieamon can have full unfettered rule of the Tamiya state, and Oiwa will not suffer dishonor. Kondo protests, but Ieamon and Ohana readily agree, and Lord Oiwa also nods his agreement. Thus, the plot against Oiwa begins. Their plot will lead to great suffering and death, and will spawn the greatest and most horrific ghost story in the history of Japan. That story will come in the next episode of Mysterious Japan.
This has been Mysterious Japan, created, written, and translated by Heath Havey. Thank you for listening and making this podcast possible. Please visit our website at www.themysteriousjapan.com for more information. Please join us next time as we continue to explore the dark histories and strange mysteries of Japan.